In a way, every clone who chose a name was already resisting the chip built to override his free will. In 2005, Marshal Commander Cody traded words with Obi-Wan Kenobi, then ordered the strike meant to kill him. That's why today I'm covering 8 named clone troopers and the moment each one's individuality met that chip, starting with the commander who earned a friend's trust right before losing that choice. Commander Cody. The most heartbreaking scene in the prequel trilogy is a handshake. Obi-Wan Kenobi hands his lightsaber back to Commander Cody on a ledge above the sinkholes of Utapau, the two of them grinning like men who've survived 100 campaigns together, buddy cop chemistry included, because they have. Moments later, Cody orders the artillery turrets to open fire on that same friend. The gap between those two moments is shorter than a commercial break, and it holds the entire tragedy of the clone army in miniature. By 2005, when Revenge of the Sith reached theaters, Cody's first canonical appearance landed in live action, a major named clone trooper with real dialogue and real command. He commands the 212th Attack Battalion. He runs the Utapau assault like a seasoned professional, coordinating troop landings and speeder drops while Kenobi hunts General Grievous underground. The film spends real screen time making him a person before it needs him as a weapon. Then Order 66 comes through on the comm, and Cody's face goes completely still, calm in a way the scene has not earned yet. He turns, gives the strike order, and the turret fire drops Kenobi into the sinkhole below. The film cuts away before his expression can tell you anything else. Whatever he feels about it stays entirely off screen, buried before the story even gives it a name, though he was laughing with that same man less than a minute earlier. Fans have spent years reading that silence 2 different ways. One version says, the absence proves the chip works exactly as designed, a clean override with nothing left of the man underneath. The other version leans on everything the film just showed you. A commander sharp enough to run a planetary assault, close enough to Kenobi to joke with him first. Neither reading gets confirmed on screen, but the second fits the man the film just spent 2 scenes building, and the blank stare reads less like peace and more like a man switched off mid-thought, which is a considerably worse thing to put on screen. His official designation is CC-2224, the number Republic records use to identify him, ranking above his name in the chain of command. For just over a minute of screen time, the story let you forget that number existed. Order 66 reminded everyone, Cody included, which one the Republic actually meant. That's the shape the whole story keeps returning to. Soldiers built to number in the millions, given just enough personality to become someone, then reset the instant the war needed them to forget it. Cody carried rank, seniority, and years of earned trust into that moment, and none of it bought him even a second of resistance. Whether that kind of protection ever existed further down the chain, among men who never got a promotion or a private joke with a Jedi is a very different question. Captain Rex T-7567 is a serial number that outlived its own purpose, because the man wearing it spent years proving he was never reducible to it. Rex commands Torrent Company in the 501st Legion, standing as Anakin Skywalker's second for the entire run of the Republic's war, and he steps into that role in 2008 as the first clone the franchise ever asked audiences to follow across dozens of episodes instead of a single scene. That amount of screen time changes what a clone trooper can be. Cody got a handful of standout moments before the chip in his head made the choice for him. Rex gets years, mission after mission, each one a fresh chance to weigh an order against his own read of the situation, and he takes that chance constantly. He argues with Jedi generals. He questions command decisions that put his men at risk for no clear gain. He treats his own conscience as a legitimate input into military strategy, which is not what the Kaminoans designed him to do. Ahsoka Tano is where that pattern becomes a relationship instead of a personality trait. After Anakin's attention splits across the war, Rex and Ahsoka end up running operations together constantly, and fans read the partnership as one of the most sustained bonds between a clone and a Jedi in the entire war, on par with what Plo Koon built with Wolf. Ahsoka treats him as a person whose judgment matters, not a serial number attached to a rifle. Rex spends the rest of the war proving that judgment was worth trusting, backing her plans, covering her mistakes, and eventually choosing her side over the chain of command when it counts. Here is the part that turns the whole arc dangerous. Rex survives Order 66. He gets his inhibitor chip removed after the Order nearly forces him to kill his closest friend, which means the years of conscience and loyalty and individual judgment the show spent building were not enough on their own to save him. A blade did that. A friend with a knife in about 30 seconds did that. The personhood was real. The show clearly wants you to believe it was real, and it still needed a physical intervention to survive contact with the one moment that mattered most. That is the trap sitting under every scene of Rex making the right call. Cody's collapse showed the chip could erase a fully formed man in an instant. Rex shows the reverse is not automatically true, that becoming a fully formed man does not automatically protect you from the same erasure. Over 6 million soldiers went through that war building exactly the kind of loyalty and judgment Rex built, and almost none of them got a blade in 30 seconds. Rex is the exception that proves how narrow the margin was, not the rule that individuality wins. Rex made it out because the chip came out in time. But the clone who comes next never got that chance. His story is the mechanism working exactly as designed. A soldier who saw the whole thing clearly, understood exactly what it was built to do, and died before anyone believed him. ARC Trooper Fives. Fives uncovered the inhibitor chip conspiracy running underneath the entire war, months before the rest of the galaxy found out the hard way, and a fellow clone shot him down on the streets of Coruscant before he could deliver his evidence. His designation is CT-5555, 4 fives stacked in a row. A serial number so absurd his own brothers used it as a punchline long before anyone knew where his story was headed. Fives comes out of Domino Squad, the cadet unit many fans credit with producing the franchise's most memorable named clones, and he climbs to ARC Trooper status through battlefield performance sharp enough to earn him a name in the Republic's most elite ranks. Everything turns when a clone trooper named Tup opens fire on a Jedi general with zero provocation, then collapses with a hole burned through the inside of his own skull. Fives digs into the autopsy himself. He finds a chip planted at the base of every clone's brain, hardware built to override a soldier's will, on a signal the clones themselves were never told existed. He traces the design through Kamino's cloning labs straight to Chancellor Palpatine's own office, the exact office already running the war behind a curtain the audience has seen through for years. That's the dramatic irony sitting inside every second of this arc. The viewer already knows Palpatine is the Sith Lord. The viewer already knows the chips are real and the chips will fire. The viewer still has to watch a decorated soldier get labeled unstable by the office he's trying to expose, stripped of rank, and hunted across Coruscant before he can reach Rex and Anakin with what he found. A fellow clone trooper shoots Fives down before that meeting ever happens. The theory never makes it into official channels. The chip program survives by erasing the one clone who understood how it worked, months before. Order 66 turns that same hardware into a galaxy-wide massacre switch. Rex lived because Ahsoka Tano cut his chip out with her own hands during Order 66 itself. Fives died with his chip, and everyone else is still seated exactly where the Kaminoans put them, and the narrative strongly suggests he got close enough to the wiring that its owner had him killed first. The rebellion Rex represents was one bullet away from never getting a chance to start at all. Many fans argue Fives stands as the most morally courageous clone in the franchise, a man who ran an investigation into a conspiracy he couldn't even name, operating without institutional backing with no rank left to protect him. Read that way, he came closer to stopping Order 66 than any other clone in the war. CT-555 stopped being a joke about repeated digits and started reading like a eulogy for the man who nearly saved the Republic from itself. Fives clawed his way back from nothing twice, once off a cadet washout list, and once off a battlefield that should have ended him long before Arky status ever became a possibility. The clone, standing next in his own squad, shares that exact starting point in Domino Squad, but his version of coming back cost him pieces of himself that make the word survival feel like it needs an asterisk. ARC Trooper, Echo. Fives spent his final days trying to prove a truth that would eventually cost him everything, and Echo is what happens when that same truth costs a clone his body instead of his life. CT-1409 wore a designation almost nobody remembers because the personality behind it was too specific to ignore. He came up through Domino Squad alongside Fives, the two of them tangled together from their very first mission onward, which is exactly why Echo's story reads like an answer to a question the franchise never got to ask out loud. What happens to the brother who actually survives? Echo earned his own nickname the hard way, doing the thing his squad needed most, repeating mission data back with total precision, mirroring orders until they stuck. That habit is the entire joke of what happens to him later, and it isn't a funny one. An injury during the war convinced the Republic that Echo was already gone. The Republic listed him as dead. Separatist forces had him alive the whole time, wired directly into their own computing infrastructure, his mind repurposed to process the exact kind of tactical data he used to recite from memory as a soldier. The trait that earned him his name got turned into hardware, his precision weaponized against the army he came from. And Echo repeats what it's given. And for a while, that's exactly the function the Separatists forced onto him. It left him arguably the most physically transformed clone the war produced. That's the detail that fuels the debate over whether Echo suffered more than Fives did. Fives paid with his life to expose the chip program, and Canon backs that up in full. Echo paid years earlier, losing his own body to enemy machinery long before Fives ever pulled a trigger on the truth. There's a real argument that a body rebuilt out of enemy parts costs more than a single death delivered for the right cause. Nothing in Canon settles which price was higher. Line the two of them up anyway, and the pattern is hard to miss. The war took something permanent from both of the men who tried hardest to be more than their numbers. Echo comes back. He gets rescued, reintegrated into active duty, and the man who walks back into a briefing room still carries his own name, his own brothers, his own memory of who he was before the wires went in. The Separatists rebuilt his body, his identity held anyway. That's the quiet horror sitting underneath every clone who fights this war for personhood instead of just following orders. The Republic ordered 5 million more soldiers on top of the millions already in the field, and every one of them was engineered to be interchangeable, and Echo proved that even after his body stopped being fully his own, the person underneath held its shape. Which raises the exact question the Republic never wanted asked out loud. If a man's mind can survive being turned into enemy hardware, what does it actually take to erase him? Echo came back changed but still himself, which is its own kind of answer about how deep clone identity actually runs. The soldier who comes next never had to be rebuilt from parts. His damage was visible on the outside from the start, written into his armor and his face, and it tells a different story about what it costs to keep showing up. Commander Wolf, one eye. That's the whole biography, right there on his face before Commander Wolf says a single word. CC3636 is 6 characters on a manifest, the kind of designation a quartermaster types without looking up. It tells you nothing about the dented plate over his ribs, the missing eye, or the years of campaigns that put both there. That gap between the paperwork and the man is the entire point of Wolf. He commands the 104th Battalion, one of the most recognizable clone units outside the 501st and the 212th, despite living in their shadow for most of the war. Rex has Anakin's spotlight, Cody has Obi-Wan's, Wolf has neither, and somehow that's part of what makes him stick. His armor carries scorch marks and scrapes that accumulated faster than they could be painted over, a scarred pauldron, a cybernetic eye standing in for the one he lost. All of it reads like a log file nobody bothered to clear. His personality matches the gear. Where other clones lean idealistic or defiant, Wolf stays blunt, cautious, and measured. Even in the middle of active combat, he skips the monologues about choice or freedom, just makes the call, watches the corners, and keeps his squad alive one more day. That discipline is its own kind of survival strategy, quieter than Rex's loyalty or Echo's second life inside enemy hands, but built from the same raw material. Echo got his mind rebuilt piece by piece after the Separatists tore it apart. Wolf took a different route. The war just kept adding to him, one scar at a time, until the outside matched whatever was happening underneath. The war cost him an eye first, and more quietly, the version of him that existed before it. What's left checks every corner and trusts almost nothing, because in his unit, the quiet moments were the ones that got people killed. Nothing in canon ranks Wolf against Rex and Cody on a scale of loyalty versus survival, but the pattern in how each one is written invites the comparison, and fan discourse leans into it hard. Rex bends the rules to save people. Cody follows orders even when they cost him everything, including a friend on the Utapau sinkhole rim. Wolf sits in the middle, disciplined enough to stay a soldier, wary enough to never fully trust the system running him. He's the version who saw exactly what loyalty and self-preservation both cost, and never let either one win outright. That's what makes the chip's design so brutal in his case specifically. A man who reads as pure war on the outside, damaged eye and dented armor and all, still gets filed under the same 6-character override as every other clone in the Grand Army. It was built to erase all of them at the same depth, regardless of how much of the person was visible on the surface, whether the identity underneath was carved in from the outside or rebuilt from the inside out. Every commander on this list built that identity out of the war itself, choice by choice, scar by scar. There's one case still ahead where a man lost everything the war ever gave him, every memory, every unit, every reason to keep fighting, and the person underneath came back anyway, fully intact, on a planet with nothing left to remind him who he was. That's the version of this question the override was never built to survive. Clone Commando Gregor. Somewhere in the Republic's numbering system sits a designation longer than any other clone in this lineup carries, and the man wearing it spent a stretch of his life unable to remember he was wearing it at all. CC 557639. It reads like a shipping label stamped on a very serious piece of hardware belonging to a man who would eventually forget he had a name to go with it. That hyphenated suffix marks him as a clone commando, a specialist tier stacked above the standard infantry designation, trained for demolitions and close quarters work far beyond what standard infantry training covered. The Republic built an entire numbering architecture to sort its soldiers by function, skill, and unit, and then handed one of the more elaborate versions of that architecture to a man it was about to lose completely. A shuttle crash after the Battle of Sarish wipes Gregor's memory clean, taking his squad, his mission, and the war itself with it. He washes up on Abafar and spends a long stretch there, working as a dishwasher at a diner, scrubbing plates with no memory of the war, a role that would look absurd on any Republic file. A commando trained to breach bunkers ends up elbow deep in a sink. The Republic trained him to breach reinforced doors and clear rooms under fire. Scrubbing plates for tips never showed up in that training, and he handled it anyway, calm as ever. D-Squad tracks him down eventually, and he meets Rex later, after the memories come back, rebuilding the friendship one shared joke and one dangerous mission at a time, with no dossier around to speed things up. He rebuilds his own identity through action instead. The same humor, the same steadiness under fire, the same refusal to abandon the people counting on him, all reassembling themselves before anyone hands him a single page to confirm it. Cody needed a single order to break him. Fives died trying to prove the chip existed. Gregor lost everything the chip could theoretically have used as a foothold. His name, his unit, his entire service record, and the loyalty that mattered survived the loss without a wire to carry it. That's the detail worth sitting with. If identity really lived inside the designation number, Gregor should have come back as a blank slate with no signal attached. He didn't. Wolf's identity got carved into him across years of grinding campaign. Echo's got rebuilt piece by piece after Skako Minor nearly erased him for good. Rex's identity survived surgery on his own skull. Cody's collapsed the instant a chip flipped a switch it was built to flip. Gregor skips the surgery, skips the campaign, skips the slow accumulation entirely, and still comes back as himself. Because whatever made him, Gregor lived somewhere the Republic's paperwork could never reach. Millions of men got stamped out of the same tanks on Kamino, handed numbers before they had names, and sent to die in a war none of them voted for. A handful of them spent that same war quietly proving the number was never the whole story, choosing a name, a squad, a joke, a kindness, a line they wouldn't cross even when the order told them to cross it. Gregor is the cleanest version of that proof the Republic ever produced, because he's the one case where the memory, the mission, and the unit roster all disappear at once, and the man underneath still shows up fully formed anyway. Jokes intact, CC 557639 was built as one of the more elaborate designations on record, longer than Wolf's, longer than Cody's, longer than any number this video has named. It still couldn't hold him. The Republic wrote one of its more elaborate labels for Gregor, lost him completely, and got him back completely, without the number ever doing a single moment of the work. Order 66 was engineered to reach into every clone's skull and end the story on command. It never got the chance to test itself against a man who had already proven on a forgotten planet with nobody watching that his personality could survive losing everything else first. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.